Grace to you and peace from God who is, who was, and who is to come. Amen. So as I was sitting over at the Silver Springs Panera working on my sermon, which is apparently becoming my favorite place to work on them, not the least of which is because you get free refills from Mountain Dew, I started to think about all that's happened in this last year, because today, this Christ the King Sunday, this marks the end of our church year. Advent, which will begin next Sunday, that's the beginning of the church season. So Christ the King Sunday brings our church year, our liturgical year, to a close. And so I was trying to just thinking back over what's happened not only here at Trinity, but in my life and around the world as well. And as I was looking back and thinking on all of these things, I started to wonder, how can I realistically claim Christ is King? Because last October of 2017, we had that tragic massacre at that outdoor concert in Las Vegas that left 59 people dead. A few weeks after that, there was that shooting in the church in Texas. 26 people were killed. Shortly after that, in Florida at the Parkland High School, 17 students were shot and killed by a gunman there. More recently, we just had someone who entered a nightclub out in California. Just this last week, there was the fellow in Colorado who was convicted of murdering his wife and 2 small daughters because apparently he couldn't be bothered to ask for a divorce. There were 11 people killed in Pittsburgh because of their faith. 2 people shot in Jeffersontown, Kentucky because they had the wrong skin color. Is there such a thing as the wrong skin color? And just this week, I don't know, you might have missed this one, a disgruntled individual shot and killed his former fiance and 2 other people at a hospital in Chicago. How can I claim Christ is King? So let's talk about the weather instead. This year, we saw major hurricanes, plural, one right after the other. There are drought conditions out on the West Coast that are so bad they've led to some of the most devastating wildfires on record. The death toll there continues to rise. Earthquakes, tsunamis, floods have occurred worldwide. Just Friday, the U.S. government released a paper warning about the dangers of global warming. Weather and war are working together in places like Yemen, where a report that came out last week, based on some numbers from the United Nations, that an estimated 85,000 children under the age of 5 have died in the last 3 years because of malnutrition. And do I even dare bring up what's recently come to light about sexual abuse in the Roman Catholic Church? Here, within our congregation, well-loved people have received terminal diagnoses. Loved ones have died, some unexpectedly, others after long-term illnesses, or enduring an illness that takes away the very essence of who they were, leaving an empty shell of a human being that barely resembles the person that they once were. With all of these things that I've already talked about and things that I haven't mentioned or I didn't hear about or that I can't remember because there are just too doggone many of them, how can I stand up here and boldly and joyfully ring out, Christ is King? I really don't know how. Now, maybe it's because I should be dead a couple of times over due to my own health issues. Maybe I'm just getting way too cynical. But I really don't believe that I can, in good conscience, joyfully shout that out right now. So instead, let me tell you what I do believe. I believe that we live in a world that is fractured. We live in a world that is imperfect and sin-filled. I believe we live in a world where infants die and smart, intelligent people get Alzheimer's. I believe that we live in a world where humans can mess with the environment to the point that we might not be able to bring it back. I believe that we live in a world where people will kill one another over astoundingly stupid things, like the color of someone's skin, or to get access to money or drugs, or since we just all endured Black Friday, where people have been trampled to death in order for someone else just to get a better bargain on a thing. I also believe that we live in a world where God walks with us. I believe that in everything that happens to us, God is right here with us. Whether we feel God's presence or not, God is there. God is with us with all the good, happy, joy-filled times. And God's there when it hits the fan. And the illness and the awfulness that happens to us each and every day of our lives. Now, God does not cause the bad stuff. I believe rather that God allows the bad stuff to happen, knowing that each of us will then have to make a choice as to how we deal with life when those lousy things trip us up. And there is a difference between causing and allowing. And I don't say any of that lightly. I say that in part because any God that would cause the death of my 2-day-old child, I don't want anything to do with that God. However, a God that knows we're going to have a little bit of a difficult gestation, that our child is going to be born premature, too soon, not be able to survive outside of his mother, knowing that the death of our child will cause all kinds of other people to question their own faith, all the while strengthening our own faith, and that God still is willing to not interfere, is willing to be with us, to love us, and walk with us in our sorrow and in our grief. That is a God that I love. Now, today we're celebrating Christ the King Sunday. It's probably fairly safe to say that that's a moniker that most of us here can't relate to. I mean, we're Americans. We don't do monarchies. They're difficult for us to comprehend. So for our sake, to being able to better understand it, I'm going to call this the Reign of Christ Sunday. Now the thing is, most of us, myself included, I really think that even though we're Christians, even though we believe in Christ, we probably really don't let Christ reign in our hearts. We don't allow Christ to rule our lives. Because I don't know about you, but I'm fairly certain that I can lead my life by myself. Thank you very much. I don't really need your help, Christ. I mean, yeah, sure, it's nice of you to, every now and then drop by to answer my prayers, especially when I'm praying for something that I want or somebody that I love is ill. But, for the most part, if you and me just want to get together on Sunday mornings or sometimes Saturday night, that would be really fine with me. Yeah. No, I don't think so. What if we were to allow God, to allow Christ to honestly rule in our hearts, to guide our actions, not to make us feel guilty so that we help out at the food bank or New Hope Ministry. No, what if we listen to what Christ calls us to do, feed those who are hungry, regardless of their skin color or their ethnic heritage or how it is that they came to be in those circumstances? What if we housed the homeless, despite their inability to speak English without an accent or wanting to cook food that maybe I don't like? What if we listened and, more importantly, acted on when Christ calls us to help the helpless, whether they're in another part of the world or living just a few doors down from us? What would our lives look like? What would the world look like if any of us, if all of us, if one of us were willing to risk everything that the world tells us is right, is good, is what you deserve? What if we risked all that in order to allow Christ to reign in our hearts? The world will still be messed up. People will continue to listen to their inner demons and keep doing awful and terrible things. And God will still love those people regardless. The weather's not going to change anytime soon. It's been too long in making itself to be quickly corrected. But if we, as a people, as a congregation, as individuals, if we allow Christ to truly reign in our hearts, to be king of our lives, what would this world look like? So why don't we?